Check it, it's Nextlevelmetaman, and to start off this video, I'd like to thank y'all for the 350 subs. I never had any idea I would make it here this early, but now that I have, thank you guys. Appreciate it, and hopefully there's way more to come. So, as one of my first landmarks of this channel, I kind of wanted to bring back the whole story videos, right? The people who've seen them seem to like it a whole lot, so I would love to bring it back. See what you guys think. Now, I'm messing with the format a little bit, so I have gameplay in the background. This game is a mod of Arma 3 on PC called Breaking Point. It's a zombie survival game, and hopefully you enjoy watching it while I tell you this Yu-Gi-Oh based story. Now, to get us started, this is a story of salt. It's a story about revenge, and a story of a game that I really didn't want to lose. Moving on, so let's bring the clock back to 1934. Now, back in the day, I was just starting my first competitive Yu-Gi-Oh career, so to speak, and I found a lot of confidence with evols, thinking I made the correct meta call against Hat at the time. I picked up a new deck called Battery Man and splashed them with artifacts. I'm not the most original motherfucker for doing it, but man, it sure as hell was an awesome deck. Monarch stormed forth to close the game on your opponent and dealing out over 8k damage at the drop of a hat. The artifacts helping with disruption on your opponent and anything in between. It was honestly one of the most perfect decks I've ever had, and one of the first decks that really got me into competitive play. I was so confident, in fact, that I actually went to my first regional, and it was honestly pretty exciting. It was the first time I went to such a big tournament, and it was a Charlotte regional at that, so I was really looking forward to it. Me and a bunch of friends that went, it was also our first time, so hey, we were all nervous and loved to talk between rounds whether or not we won or lost. Getting straight into it, I guess I went ahead and lost the first round against Mythic Rulers and Skill Drain, but ever since then I went on quite the winning streak. But that's not really the focus of the story. The focus of the story is what happens next. So it was around round 4 or 5, I'm not quite sure, but we had a break. One of the last breaks I've ever seen in a regional, but we used this break to go ahead and head to McDonald's. All good, all good. We get to McDonald's and we see that the McDonald's is completely overrun by Yu-Gi-Oh players. And you would assume they're Yu-Gi-Oh players because everyone and their mom has on a backpack, which is the biggest sign to tell you, hey, this is a Yu-Gi-Oh player. The line was so long, in fact, that we got the text message to come back because the rounds were up before we even got our food. And we felt like we were one of the first people to order. So, quick fix, we walk up to the people and tell them, hey, we gotta be somewhere. We'll come back later. We already paid for the food. We'll get our food then, right? So it's all good. We rush back as fast as we can to the round. The round's already started and it's 2 minutes in. So we're really close to that first round loss. My friends find their opponents and I find mine. When I sit down and I see the guy next to me, he seems like he's pretty pissed off. Like the day hasn't done him too well. Now, at this time, we've only been X1. This is the X1 people playing at the time. So I didn't think it could have been too bad. Boy, was I wrong. I sit down in front of the guy in a hurried fashion, telling him, sorry, I'm late. And he pulls out a very peculiar mat. The kind of mat that you remember. It was dark blue and it seemed like it was colored with crayon. But in the center of it was, if some of you know this character, Simon, aka the Ice King from Adventure Time. And it shows a period in that character's life where he was being overwhelmed by the crown itself, slowly losing his mind, and honestly pays tribute to some of the deepness in Adventure Time if you care to listen. I saw the mat and I thought it was one of the saddest mats I ever seen, and only questioning, why would someone use a mat like this? This must be a really sad individual, but I didn't want to dwell on that too much because I had a game to win. Being the kind of deck that this is, it OTKs. That's the point of the deck. And if I don't OTK, I lock them out with Pallades and things of that nature. So when he started off and only summoned one Mythic Ruler and a back row and passed turn, I thought it was an easy win. I went ahead and MST'd the back row and hit him with the usual comboage, 9-fold, charger, fuel cell, game. Didn't really quite understand what he was playing because I didn't think the dragon that he summoned was something that they normally play at Mythic Rulers. So much so that I didn't even side. The first game was over in one turn and we moved on to the second game, with the only break in between is him siding some cards. He decides to go first again, and to be honest with you, I don't really know why. I can see his anger peaking, and he's starting to shuffle his cards a lot more while staring at me kind of intensively, to the point where it almost makes you uncomfortable. Now, I'm pretty sure anyone who's been to a regional has seen these salty players. These players that make you completely uncomfortable to even play with, and a lot of people deal with these type of players in different ways. Some people make fun of them, some people laugh in their face, some people make it seem like they're having more fun just to piss the person off. I'm not really that type of person. When someone's really upset around me, it kind of makes me uncomfortable. And I'm generally the type of person that if someone's extremely pissed off, I sort of blame myself. Even though I know that it's not my fault. But I try to do things to make things a little bit better. But I had to game the win. I had to get food before my friends ended their round. So he decided to go first again for some reason and honestly set up a much stronger board. This time with a fail grand and another face down. But unfortunately for him, I had Monarchs on fourth. I attempted to tribute his Monarchs on fourth and he activated his fail grand's effect, but that didn't stop me. I went off, summoning the charger off of a 9-volt that I summoned earlier with a double summon, special summon the 9-volt, then the charger, special summon the fuel cell, another fuel cell, and another fuel cell, and with that I was able to beat over the Belgrade. At that point I had full lineup of 2,000 attack point monsters and attacked them for game, almost effortlessly. The face down was actually a soul charge. Astonished at the fact that I actually beat my opponent all rounds in probably less than a minute, I hurriedly started picking up my stuff because of the food that is my job to fetch. I look at my opponent one last time and his anger is completely peaking. And in an effort to try to make him feel better, it's like, I'm sorry about that, man. Sorry if I seemed like I was in a rush, but I have to hurry up and go. I said, I told him it was a good game, which may have not been the best thing for me to do, to be honest with you. I signed the slip and try to hand it to him. He takes the slip, scribbles something down, and throws it back at me. Repeats the phrase, no the fuck it wasn't. After seeing that and the shock to seeing this guy's salt and resentment towards me peaking, I shrugged, took the slip and said, I'm sorry. And I got up and I walked away. Turned in the slip and I see my friend just starting his game. He looks at me and confuses him when I ask him to hand me the keys so I can go ahead and get the food. And his round didn't even start. I beat my opponent in probably less than 2 minutes. He was astonished, all the other people were astonished, and I went to go ahead and get the McDonald's that we missed. At the end of the round, all my friends got fed and I had a bunch of time to spare, which was all pretty good. I ended up not topping that regional or getting the invite because I ended up losing the last round before I could get top 32. But that's all good. And that's just the foreground to the actual part of the story. So a few years later, in 2015, I have been coming to my locals more often. The hero structure deck came out and it quickly became my main deck. Battery Man, even though I appreciate what it did for me, didn't really do it for me anymore, so I jumped ship. But this time at locals, there were a few new people. A few people that I've never seen before, and one in particular person that kept staring at me. He kept sizing me up ever since I entered the room, and I wanted to ask him what his problem was, but he never really answered. He either ignored my question or just kept it moving. This wasn't a problem with me because this is my locals. I know everyone here. So someone acting a bit strange, I feel pretty secure because I know that people got my back. But it didn't change the fact that he was staring at me for a prolonged amount of time. Rounds go, things happen, and to be honest with you, in this particular tournament, I wasn't doing all that well. And then I sit in front of yours truly. The kid himself isn't anything that stands out, and I just thought it was another game, and I just wanted to keep things moving because honestly, I felt rather uncomfortable in front of the guy. But then he pulled out his mat. It had a dark blue shade to it, almost like it was colored in crayon. It had a picture of the Ice King. After seeing that mat, I remember having the same feeling that I had when I first saw that mat. Not at that time remembering exactly where I saw it. an intense feeling of just sadness, and that the person that I'm playing with is an extremely sad person. I look up at him, and then that's when it hits me. That's the guy. That's the guy from the regional that I played at least 3 or 4 months prior. And I say, have I met you somewhere before? He looks at me and says, yeah. Plays you in the Charlotte Regional about 3 months back. Me astonished that I actually get to rematch somebody that I played before, I start to remember more of the match. I remember how much of an asshole this guy seemed to me and how much of an asshole he'd been today. So this duel was now something personal. This duel was a chance at his revenge, so to speak. And I sure as hell wasn't going to try to let him get it. The duel starts, and I realize very quickly that this dude is playing aliens. And for those who don't know what aliens do, they're a really old and pretty insufficient archetype at what they do, but they do have a stun aspect to them. And if you get trapped in that stun, it's really hard to break. Their boss monster bounces up their own back row, so it allows them to use any floodgate that they want under the sun. Things like Fiendish Chain, things like Royal Decree, all these things that seem like they completely block out your opponent and them can be wiped away and reused. Sort of like a Trevere, but whenever you want on your side of the field. The first round, I got thrashed. Heroes don't do all that well when it comes to stun. And every time I tried to acid his back row, there was a Fiendish Chain waiting. He would back it up. He would bring back the Fiendish Chain, bring back the Royal Decree for both my monsters and my back row. I felt trapped. There's almost nothing I could have done. He even main decks Prohibition to call Shadow Mister, Bubble Man, or Dark Law. These things break my deck in half. I'm not saying that Aliens is the most well-represented deck, but if it falls into its niche, it's extremely powerful. But that doesn't change how this dude was acting. Every single play that he made, every single play that he stopped, there was an insult. There was a banter. Things that I would try to do to break it, telling me that it's useless, and that he was gonna get what's his, and he's gonna get this win. As payback for how I acted during the Charlotte Regional. Which could be justified, maybe I was being an asshole. But that doesn't excuse how he's acting now. His banter and his insults start to get under my skin. And I've never wanted to win a match more than this one. He beats me the first game. Pretty badly. At that point, other people are done with their games and they're watching. Andrew sees the guy and he asks me what's going on here after hearing all the guy's insults. And I look at him and I tell him, remember that guy I played in the Charlotte Regional that I beat it under 2 minutes? My friend starts laughing and says, yeah, you finished before I even started. It was hilarious. Tell him that's the guy. He looks and a big smile on my friend's face arises when he's like, I hope he whoops your ass. You better not lose to Aliens. At this point, I got everybody in my locals now watching around, watching me getting beat by a deck that came out approximately in 2007. And that really kept the pressure on. Not only did I not want to lose to a guy hurling insults at me, I also didn't want to lose to a deck that a lot of people felt as being weaker. Even though the loss wouldn't have really mattered, any deck can beat any deck given the right situations. But this one was personal. Duel continues onto the second game, and I actually sort of get a foothold on him. I start MSTing the Prohibitions. I get the acid down when I went first. I was able to overcome it. And usually what happens is when I, defeat someone and they're being an asshole, usually what I try to do is to be as nice as possible. Almost like an anime protagonist. Coming back with my own banter, not just to insult them, but to show them that the way they're acting right now isn't necessarily something that I'm going to take part in. And I always thought that would be more effective. The duel continues, and this is the third round of one of the most intense duels of my life. He goes first. He automatically sets down the Prohibition, activating it and calling Mass Change. I have a pretty good hand with Shadow Mist, the Hero Lives, a Bubble Man, MST, and a Fiendish Shade. Ever since the duel continued, he set down 4 back row, made his alien boss monster that is capable of bouncing back cards he's controlled, and I was stuck in that lock for forever. It was bouncing up Royal Decree and Fiendish Chain like it was clockwork. Every time I'd move, he'd play another one out. Every time I'd try something, he'll play another one out. And I quickly realized the only way I could possibly win this game is if I can activate Acid. But how do I deal with the Acid with the Fiendish Chain and the constant reusal? I have a Mass Change in hand, but it's not like I can search another one. I can't activate Acid Effect, Chain, Mass Change to bring out another Acid because I ran two at the time. That wasn't an option. I didn't have the resources to do that. So I simply just started setting monsters. Again and again and again. I MST'd my opponent's Prohibition, and that's when he started realizing that maybe I might have a shot. So he started playing more aggressively. He summoned alien monsters that he would later use as combo pieces to bring out his boss monster just in case I had a Regeki. He started using them for offense. This duel went on like this for a good 4 turns, with me finally being at around 800 life points left. It's his turn now, and all I have is a face-up Bubble Man that I summoned the turn prior. But I have a trick up my sleeve. You see, a few turns ago, I actually drew that second Mass Change. But the second Acid wasn't going to be enough to stop him. He had 2 Fiendish Chains down in there. Multiple answers that I probably didn't even see coming. And I knew that my only hope was to trap him under his own Royal Decree. He attacks into my Bubble Man and I chain Mass Change, bringing out Acid. I attempt to activate its effect and it's met with a Fiendish Chain. So after I summon the Acid, being 26 on 26, he's forced in the battle phase, even though he was able to save his back row. But this is all a part of the plan. He activates his Cosmic Fortress's effect to bounce back his Fiendish Chain, and another card that he targets. I take this opportunity to go ahead and chain my Fiendish Chain on the Cosmic Fortress. Now remember, in this duel, I've only been able to summon just random cards in defense mode and back row to see if I can beat back this guy's advantage. At this time, I only have 4 cards to my name. A Bubble Man, a Mass Change, another Mass Change, and a Fiendish Chain. How on earth can I beat back with him having a Fiendish Chain and Royal Decree and 2 more cards face down? But I will say that Fiendish Chain that I did on his Cosmic Fortress couldn't have landed better. Scared that he's possibly able to lose out his big advantage card, he goes ahead and chains the Royal Decree, not even realizing what he's actually done. He bounces back the Fiendish Chain and sets it because it was his previous target, not the Royal Decree. And it's my go. I draw a card with only 1 card in hand, and what do you know? It's Reinforcement of the Army. I crack a big smile at my opponent and the people watching and tell him, you know, man, no matter what happens, it was a pretty good game. You've gotten a lot better since the last time I dueled you, and even though you were extremely rude and this match has taken a toll on both me and you, I think I'm the one that's gonna win this duel. My opponent looks at me in disbelief and notions me to keep it moving. So then I show him the card that I drew, which is Reinforcement of the Army. Add a Bubble Man to my hand and summon him. My opponent, seeing what's coming next, says, it doesn't matter what you do. If that's the only card you got, it's already over. I activate the Mass Change targeting the Bubble Man. He's like, wow, you really run 2? It's pretty funny. I bring out Acid and attempt to activate his effect. He changed one of the Fiendish Chains. I start laughing and say, wow, man, it's really funny because if you didn't fuck yourself up, you would have actually had this one. He looks around in confusion, not sure what I'm talking about. I negated his effect. Okay, so there's no reason to talk about it anymore. And I say, how about you look at your field, my man? The second his eyes lock in on that Royal Decree, his eyes widen and he truly realizes what just happened. That by his own card, he's gone into full offense and completely forgotten about his defense. Any Fiendish Chain or any other back row that he would have had to interrupt this play is negated. thanks to the same card that he's been using this entire time to keep my back row pressed. With a smile, I look at him and say, you know it's over, right? You've been talking all this shit, and now look what's happening to you. I destroy every single last one of his back row, revealing that there was actually 2 more Fiendish Chains down there, along with the Royal Decree. 3 Fiendish Chains in total. I see why that he was confident, thinking that this is just fine and that I would have to crash just to keep the game even. He says to me, well, crash. I have another monster in hand and acid is the only thing you got. I'll crash next turn and win, so it really doesn't matter. And this is the one thing that people always forget about Mass Hero Acid. When it destroys back row, it decreases all attack points my opponent controls by 300, allowing Acid to not just crash, but beat over Cosmic Fortress, giving me a huge advantage. I attack over the monster, and for the first time this entire duel, I actually felt in control. That the walls that he put up in front of me isn't gonna stop me. And the fact that I was so gracious in winning, and basically told him it was a good game, and even complimented my opponent, seemed to finally start breaking through them. He attempts top decking, he top decks into the alien vanilla monster. Doesn't help. He holds it in his hand, and even though he has a life point advantage, he thinks, well, maybe if I draw something better, I can start this train back up. But my acid is relentless. Every time I attack, every turn I draw more cards. Every back row that he sets, I top deck an MST to get rid of it. His acid is the end goal. It's the last thing I got. He top set one last card with 2 cards in hand, and it's another vanilla. He sets it and continues to do so. I continue on the assault to where he has no monsters in hand and no cards on field, and top deck a Dark Hole. Destroys all monsters on field, and to be honest with you, I shrug and say, damn, I don't really have any cards in my name, but maybe I can top deck something to sort of end this. His beaters are a lot stronger than mine, and all he has to do is summon 1 to gain the ultimate advantage and actually win the duel. It's my turn to draw, and I have no cards in hand and no cards on field. It seems like my buddy Bubble Man's on my side again. I draw the 3rd Bubble Man, immediately special summoning it and drawing 2 cards, which is my favorite effect and always seems to come and help me out in a true pinch. When I draw the 2 cards, he starts to realize how done this game actually is. I summon Shadow Mist off of the draw and overlay into Blade Armor Ninja. I attack directly for game and the duel's over. I win. Some people at the locals, understandably, was disappointed because they actually wanted to see Alien win. But to them, they didn't really understand what that duel was. That duel was this dude angry at me. Me sort of angry at him. It's a duel that started up in regionals and finally made it here. I complimented my opponent again and emphasized to him how much better he's gotten. And last time I didn't really see how much of a good player he was, even though those words that I used were honestly just to sort of diffuse the situation. And out of the best bet, make a new friend out of a stunning defeat. Even if the thing that made him lose was his own misplay, I at least wanted to sort of dissipate the feeling that he may have of failing due to his own hand. He accepted, and I basically told him, I understand how it is, man, but you was being pretty rude during that game, Ain't no need for that. And next time you duel me, man, you'll probably get it. Be honest with you, I got pretty lucky. He accepted that and just moved on. Seems a lot happier than how he was before the duel started, and seemed like the resentment that he had toward me sort of left. Haven't seen that guy again until about a few months down the line. Shows up at my locals again. I'm pretty sure the guy lives in the same state, but pretty far off.
Yeah.
Had a nice conversation. Doesn't seem to resent me as much, so I guess everything seemed to pan out. Told me about his deck, told me about his tech, and honestly told me about his favorite deck at the time, which is Yugioh. Laugh with him, joke with him, and continue to keep it moving. So I guess I made a new friend out of all this salt. And that's the end of the story. Hope you guys enjoyed, and tell me how you think about this whole story series I be doing. I don't think I'll be doing these all too often, just sort of on special occasions. But if you guys like this sort of format, or you want to actually see face cam, during these videos, just let me know. But until next time, peace.